If things aren't going well, you're not getting the results you were hoping for or expected, and basically you're in a mess, what can you do? Well, as Douglas Adams said in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic. And in this video, we'll look at the simplest way forward to get you back on track. So let's talk about it. In this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world full of change, we get put under a lot of pressure, and this causes stress and anxiety. Now, if you're struggling, whether it's because you can't get a product or service released on time, too many defects, running over budget, can't get work completed in sprint, or whatever it is, take a deep breath. This is a normal part of working in complex dynamic environments that have so much uncertainty over their products and services. You can't try and solve all the problems at the same time. If you try to do that, you're going to be increasing your work in progress and increasing your context switching, both of which lead to getting less work done and actually making things worse. They've both been proven not only to make you less productive, but also unhappier. Now, to learn more about that, check this video out. Right, so what should you do? Well, have you heard of the theory of constraints? Well, listen on, because this is going to help you. Now, the theory of constraints, commonly referred to as TOC, is an overall management philosophy introduced by Elihu Goldratt in his 1984 book, The Goal. And then Goldratt adapted the concept to project management with his book, The Critical Chain, in 1997. Now, the theory of constraints is based on the premise that the rate of goal achievement is limited by at least one constraint. Now, a constraint is a limitation, restriction, or bottleneck stopping you from achieving your objective. So, for example, if you're constantly unable to complete work in sprint or achieve a sprint goal, there's a constraint in your system because it's stopping you from delivering value to your customers. A system is basically anything: a team of teams, a value stream, even the company itself. It's a set of things that work together as part of a mechanism or interconnecting network. And only by increasing the flow through the constraint can overall throughput be increased. Now, as long as you understand your goal, which is your most important objective, and you've got a way of measuring this, the steps you need to follow are: 1. Identify the system's constraint. 2. Decide how to exploit the system's constraint. 3. Subordinate everything else to the above decision. 4. Elevate the system's constraint. And 5. Avoid inertia and repeat the process. Now, understanding your goal might be something like delivering value to your customers regularly. And measurement could be feedback, increased customer retention, whatever. You just need a way of measuring your goal. So, the first step is to identify your constraints and select the most important one first to focus on. Now, you can't lessen your constraint or bottleneck until you know exactly what it is. Now, in the example I gave, where you're constantly unable to complete work in a sprint or achieve the sprint goal, this is actually a symptom of something else. So, you need to dig deeper into the cause. For example, it might be that you're trying to do too much in sprint, or perhaps you've got too many dependencies. Or to put it another way, in healthcare, adding more beds to a hospital will likely not improve the quality of care if the real problem is a bottleneck in the emergency department. Now, it won't necessarily be obvious, so you'll need to do some analysis. And the next step is to exploit the constraint. So pull your constraint apart and see if there's any obvious ways that you could make it better. Next step is to subordinate everything else to the constraint. So make sure that everything that feeds into the constraint is running properly. So in our earlier example, where we constantly can't get things done in sprint or achieve the sprint goal, let's say that we identified that the cause is we're taking too much work into sprint. In this case, we need to look at everything that feeds into that. It might not be as simple as just taking less work in. So what's driving the behavior? Stakeholder management pressure? The team? Both. Everything that feeds that constraint needs to be looked at. Our next step is to elevate the constraint. So now it's time to actually do something about reducing or eliminating the constraint. Now, following on with our previous example, it could be that we're going to take less work into sprint, but also understand the work better by holding refinement sessions and identify dependencies before going into sprint, and forming closer relationships with stakeholders and management about the capacity and sustainability of the team. And finally, you get to the last step: avoid inertia and repeat the process. So, don't think you're done now that you've managed to remove one constraint. Avoiding inertia here means don't get complacent. This is a continual process. It's about continuous improvement. So, start the process all over again. A theory of constraints isn't something that you get through or finish. Instead, it's a continuous approach to ensure your team is constantly iterating and improving. The key to this is to just pick one thing at a time, your biggest constraint or bottleneck, and focus on fixing that first before anything else. To get started, you could use targeted retrospectives to get the team's thoughts and input. So if this sounds like where you're at right now, slow down and take a minute. You can also try this from Dave Thomas, one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. It's basically the theory of constraints in disguise. Find out where you are, take a small step towards your goal, evaluate the change you made, and repeat the process. Now, the you isn't you the individual, it's the group or team that you're part of that you're trying to help. It means listening to them and understanding their issues and concerns. Take a small step towards your goal, so find the smallest change that could be made to move the team towards where they want to be. Decide on the change and implement it, but only for a fixed period of time, maybe 2 weeks. Adjust your understanding based on what you've learned and evaluate what happened. Was the change better or worse? What else could have been done? Can the change be improved? And finally, repeat the whole process again, because stagnation is death. Okay, one last point. If you're faced with 2 or more alternatives that deliver roughly the same value, then take the path that makes future change easier. Ultimately, what we do is more important than what we call it. Now, check this video out to see how design thinking can help you solve some of your biggest problems. Please like, share, and subscribe. Those things really help, and I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay humble, and I will see you next Thursday for another Agile Thought.